Hi there, I'm John GREENWOOD. I'm the author of the Singapore Saga. I don't have the time or the resources to do a full interview, so what I'm going to do today is just to address the first question that interviewers normally ask me, and then spend the rest of the time reading a passage from Hungry Ghosts, the latest book in the Singapore Saga series. The question interviewers always ask me first is, why did you write a book about Singapore? Why did you do a historical novel about Singapore? Now, I'd like to say that I always thought I had a novel in me. I'd always intended to write a novel, or always intend to write a novel about Singapore. But none of these things are true. I came to Singapore in the 1980s, and I worked at NUS for 3 years, where I fell in love with Singapore and her people, and of course the food. But I had no thought into my head about writing a novel, far less one about Singapore. Came back in 1999 to 2000 with the family, and we had a wonderful time. And I became interested in the history of Singapore, and I started reading some histories of Singapore. But no intention of writing a novel or even thought of it. Until about a couple of weeks before we were leaving to go back to the United States, a Scottish friend of mine, who was in Singapore at the time, returned my copy of Edward Rutherford's London, which is a historical novel about London. And being from Glasgow, he said to me, "You know, someone should write a book like this about Glasgow." Now, I'd been to Edinburgh University, and I said to him, "Well, you know, someone should write a book like this about Edinburgh." And then the light bulb went off my head, and I said, "No, someone should write a book like this about Singapore. And you get everything. I mean, you get secret societies, you get pirates, you get merchants, you get Chinese, Malays, Indians, you get the whole shebang." So he left, and I went to bed. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling with the Tweety birds going around my head. I just couldn't sleep. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up, went to the computer, and wrote the story that eventually became the prologue for Forbidden Hill, the first book in the Singapore Saga. For years and years afterwards, I did a whole ton of research. I kept coming back to Singapore, visiting the library, reading the old newspapers, buying books in Singapore, just going back and forth until I had a 500,000-word manuscript, which I chopped into 3 books, the first of which was Forbidden Hill, the second of which was Chasing the Dragon, and the third of which is just coming out, and which is on sale here, I believe, is Hungry Ghosts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read you parts of 2 chapters from Hungry Ghosts. There are a good number of ghosts in the Hungry Ghosts book, but this one actually deals with the Hungry Ghosts that gives the book its title. A little bit of background. What's happened is Adil Mahmood, who's a police sergeant, has discovered that there's counterfeiters operating in Singapore. There's been copper coins that have been circulating, but now there's silver coins, and that's getting much more serious. He manages to track them down to 3 secret society men who've been trying to change him in stores, and he has them arrested. He interrogates them. They say nothing at all. They claim they didn't know they were counterfeit coins and so on. Then they try to bribe him, and then one of them threatens his life. So later that evening, Adil, with his sergeant, goes back and takes that society man who threatened him, and they put him in a gharry and they take him out to the edge of a Chinese graveyard. And Adil, Captain Mahmood, asks the sergeant to go back into town and come back a few hours later. This is where it picks up. "Take the guy back to the station and send someone back to fetch us in the early morning," Adil instructed his men. And then with his right hand pushed you forward in the direction of the graveyard. In his left hand, he carried a coiled length of rope. "What are you doing? Where are you taking me?" Chu demanded to know. But already there was fear in his voice as Adil kept pushing him further into the graveyard, as the twilight turned to deepening dusk in the darkness of night. As he passed between the graves, 3 large black dogs with lean bodies and long pointed snouts followed them at a distance, leaping from stone to stone like shadows in the night. Whenever Chu stopped and tried to protest, the dogs came on, closer each time. So he did not need much persuasion from Captain Mahmood to carry on. The moon rose high in the sky, bathing the dark stones in a ghostly silver light. Eventually they came to a tall angsana tree, where Adil brought Chu to a stop and turned him around. The black dogs came forward again and stopped close by them, watching them from the silvered shadows. "What? You plan to hang me?" Chu exclaimed, when he saw the length of rope in Adil's hands. No, that would be too easy, my friend. And I expect you to talk to me first," Adil replied. He then tied the society man to the tree, so he faced back the way they had come through the graveyard, and saw the 3 black dogs baring their fangs in the shadows. When he was sure that Chu was tied fast, Adil addressed the society man in a steely voice. "I'm a policeman," he said, "and I find it rewarding to bring criminals like you to justice. But I have a relation who's a bomo, a shaman of sorts, and although I've never had the inclination to follow in his path, I seem to have inherited some of his special gifts." "What kinds of gifts are those?" Chu replied in a trembling voice, his eyes flitting from the dogs to Adil and back again. "Oh, I see the dead, and more vividly than most. Old men, young women, children, babies, Christians, Mohammedans, Buddhists and Taoists, all sorts really. I saw them as they walked through the graveyard. They are pale creatures and keep the shadows, but no doubt they will reveal themselves in due course. And especially tonight, for as I'm sure you know, tonight is the 15th night of the 7th lunar month, the night of the hungry ghosts, when the souls are released from hell to wander the earth. You do not see them now, but I assure you, you will. And you can tell me all about it when I return." You're not going to leave me here," Chu exclaimed. "No, I beg of you, don't leave me," Chu pleaded, his face now white with fear. "Oh, yes, I am," Adil replied with a cold smile. "And when I return, you will tell me all I need to know." Then he stepped backwards into the shadows and disappeared into the darkness. Chu Kang, a tiger general in the Gi Him, had killed men, women, and children on the orders of the society. Who had killed men, women, and children on the orders of the society, stood trembling in the darkness, his eyes straining out of their sockets in terror of what he might see. The 3 black dogs stood like stone statues in the gravestones before him, so close now that he could see their bloodshot eyes fixed upon him, ready to rip him apart with their long fangs if he managed to escape. Although there was little chance of that, for the policeman knew how to tie a man fast. For a while he saw nothing but the dogs and the dark shadows of the gravestones stretching into the blackness of the night beyond. Then all of a sudden he saw them, walking slowly through the graveyard, their ghostly shapes taking form in the silver moonlight. Some of them he recognized, men who he had killed, but who, to his great relief, passed him by. Then he saw a young girl, a black-haired beauty, with pale white skin and dark red lips, twisted into a thin smile. He remembered her. He had poisoned her and her family. She came up to him and took him gently by the hand. Her hand felt cold and damp to the touch, and he was overcome with fear and revulsion. Then, to his amazement, the shackles and ropes fell from him, and she led him away through the graveyard. He did not want to go with her, but found he had no will of his own, and was carried along by the dead girl as if she was trailing a paper kite. He followed, mesmerized in fear and wonder, as she guided him between the silent ghosts, until the ground opened up, and she led him down a long, winding stone staircase into hell. He knew it was hell, because he recognized Yan Lao, the king of hell, who records the names of the souls as they enter into hell, from pictures he had seen in the jade record. If you want to find out what happens when he goes down into hell with the young girl, I'm afraid you're going to have to buy the book and read it. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.